Hi everybody, this is Mrs. Waltz again, and this is Chapter 15, Lesson 2, Life During the War. In our vocabulary box, our terms are draft, which is an order for men of a certain age to serve in the military at this point in time, and Emancipation Proclamation, which was a statement that freed all slaves in Confederate states at war with the Union. Clarification, it did not free all slaves. It freed all slaves in Confederate states that were at war with the Union. We'll see that border states that were not at war with the Union, some situations like those situations that had slaves, it did not free those slaves. It freed the slaves in Confederate states which were at war with the Union. Life for soldiers. Life was hard for soldiers on both sides of the war. Many soldiers marched about 25 miles a day. They carried about 50 pounds of supplies. Many Confederate soldiers did not have enough supplies because of the Union blockade. The draft was passed as a law in the North and the South. The draft made men of a certain age serve in the military. Men in the North could pay $300 to get out of the draft. Southern men who owned 20 or more slaves could pay someone to fight in their place. That is why many called the war a rich man's war and a poor man's fight. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers died on both sides. Most died from disease rather than in battle. Remember, we've had technological advancements at this point in time, like guns that are able to shoot further and that are more accurate in their shooting, but the medical assistance hadn't advanced to the spot to be able to help those individuals, and many more lives were lost then. The Emancipation Proclamation. On January 1st, 1863, President Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation. This statement freed all slaves in Confederate states at war with the Union. Slaves in Confederate states that were already controlled by the Union were not freed. So let's pause about that for just a moment. This just told you slaves in Confederate states that were already controlled by the Union were not freed. And those in border states that were not at war with the Union were not freed. We're looking at the slaves in the states, the Confederate states, that were not controlled by the Union, that were at war with the Union. The slaves in those states were freed. Lincoln believed that he could save the Union by ending slavery. Pause on that. He believed that he could save the Union at this point in time by ending slavery. Frederick Douglass was a free African American. He encouraged African Americans to help fight the Confederacy. African Americans in the war. At the beginning of the war, African Americans were not allowed to fight. Many white Northerners believed that they did not have the ability to fight. African Americans were allowed to join the Union Army in 1862. Pause for a moment and think back about Crispus Attucks. American Revolution? First one? African Americans were not treated the same as white soldiers. They did not get equal pay. In 1863, African American Massachusetts 54th Regiment led an attack on Fort Wagner in South Carolina. Many soldiers of this regiment died, but they proved to Northerners that they could fight. They were resilient and they kept fighting. By June 1864, Congress gave African American and white soldiers equal pay. Women in the war. Women on both sides helped with the war effort. Some women fought or acted as spies. Many women nursed wounded soldiers. So we had many women who were nursing. We had many women who were getting involved, and we saw this back at the American Revolution as well. If you remember the Daughters of Liberty, the Sons of Liberty, and the Daughters of Liberty. So it's not amazingly surprising. Again, they're going to do what they can, and they fought. They acted as spies. They disguised themselves. They helped and became nurses. Others became teachers, office workers, or ran farms and businesses while their husbands were fighting. So they stepped up and did what they needed to help. Women on both sides lost loved ones in the war. Women in the South also faced shortages of supplies. This made prices in the South rise very high. Pause and think about economics. Okay, the economy. Supplies are short, but the demand is there. What there is a scarcity, so what is available has a high price tag on it. It's worth more. It's valued. But both Northern and Southern women made clothing and other supplies that they sent to the armies. They also sent as much food as they could spare. The war goes on. By 1863, soldiers on both sides wanted the war to end. Many retired. Their shelter was poor. Many of their friends and family members had died. Many soldiers left the army without permission or went AWOL. They were absent without leave. They left, but they weren't technically supposed to. They fled. And that's lesson 2, chapter 15.